This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
I was a little bit more pausy with that one. The one, the only, Brandon Swanson. I was a little bit more energetic because we just got done with week 2, Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
Week 2 in the NFL is done.
I can't believe it. I feel like
in college football.
When I was saying week 3 picks, earlier today, it's like, wow, week 3 already. We're kind of flying through.
And I said NFL. That's because before we started recording, we were talking about something totally different than what we were talking about. Welcome in to the Primetime Podcast here on Most Valuable Podcast, your one-stop shop for everything college football, college basketball. Here on Most Valuable Podcast, we are going to be talking about some jam-packed topics, getting you guys ready for now week numero tres of the college season. But before I get into that, a little bit of house cleaning for you guys. If you guys have not already, click the link in the description. Check out patreon.com/most valuable podcast. Help support the channel to make sure that we can make better, more entertaining, and just more things that we can do. Help support the channel by checking out Patreon down below. We got some great rewards for you guys, some extra things for our patrons down below in the comment section, or in the description, I should say. But now let's get into it. We're talking about a threesome with picks at the end for week 3. We're going to look at the big matchup this week between number 3 and number 5. That's what it was last year. But yeah, number 3 and number 14 in the nation, Clemson and Louisville going at it this week. We're also going to look at Baker Mayfield and this past week's win over the Ohio State Buckeyes. We're going to look at Josh Rosen and kind of answer the question, is he the most talented quarterback in the nation this year? And then we will end the show by making our week 3 picks for the top 25 teams in the nation. But Brandon, let's start with our first topic on the docket. Clemson, big win this past week against Auburn. Kelly Bryant gets injured, but comes back in. I'll excuse a little bit of non-muting the computer there.
I wasn't sure if it was muted already, and then I saw a video pop up, and I hit the mute button just to be safe, but it was already on mute.
You and Johnny are big kind of... What do I want to say? What's the word I'm looking? Not idiots, but that works too with the mute button. I do it sometimes too. But Clemson, big win. Kelly Bryant got injured, came back. But the defense, 11 sacks on Jarrett Stidham. Clemson was able to get the win over Auburn. Louisville, it looked like they were going to get an upset loss against North Carolina. Also, one of the North Carolina players coming into last week's game said, yeah, you know what, Lamar Jackson, not going to do anything against us.
Yeah, we'll stop him.
He only had 6 touchdowns, I believe 3 through the air, 3 on the ground, en route to another victory. So I want to get right into it. I want to ask you this, Brandon, to start off this discussion with Clemson and Louisville. Will Lamar Jackson get it done against Clemson this week? Because so far in Lamar Jackson's career, he's technically played against Clemson twice. I say technically because 2 years ago, he did play in the game, but he only threw 1 pass, completed that pass. That's all he played in that loss. So I really don't associate him with that. Last year, though, 27 of 44, 295 through the air, 1 touchdown, 1 INT, 162 on the ground, and 2 touchdowns en route to a close 42-36 loss to Clemson. There was one where they could have had it on 4th down. Clemson held them late in the game to seal that victory. I'm going to ask you, though, does Lamar Jackson get it done this year against the Tigers?
I'm not thinking so. Clemson's defense is pretty good, and that's even after the guys that they lost in the offseason. Jarrett Stidham was held to 79 yards through the air. I mean, there weren't a whole lot of good things going for the Auburn Tigers the other night. They hold Cameron Petway, very good running back, on 22 carries, only 74 yards. There was really nothing going for the Auburn Tigers, and that is all because of that Clemson defense. Clemson really didn't have a whole lot going offensively either. For them to only score 14 points after just coming out and routing, who was it they played week 1? Kent State, I believe, and just absolutely blasted them with, I think, like 5 different running backs getting a touchdown. So Auburn's defense held pretty good as well, but I just don't think that we're going to see we're not going to see 6 touchdowns by Lamar Jackson come Saturday against Clemson. I just don't see that happening. There's a level that Lamar Jackson has where people will have to say, you're just going to have to try and contain him. Because it's kind of like when you come into a week of fantasy football and you've got guys saying, I'm playing against Tom Brady. Well, you just look to hopefully contain him. Hopefully he'll only throw for 1 touchdown or 2 or whatever it is. But that's kind of, I think, where Clemson's defense is. We've got to just hold him. We've got to hold him. If he scores 2 touchdowns, okay, that's it. We've done our job because he has the ability to score a whole lot more and to go wild and break free and do it with his legs and do it through the air. So if they're able to hold him down to stats of 150 passing, a touchdown or 2, you've held him. You've really held him down. But if he's able to get 300 yards on you, if he's able to score 3-4 touchdowns, that's going to be a tough day for Clemson. But what I've seen so far out of this Clemson Tiger defense doesn't have me predicting that Lamar Jackson's going to be able to do all that well against them because they're just so locked down. They're very, very good, and especially what we've seen so far this season. And I know people can say Kent State was Kent State, and they're right, but Auburn is Auburn, and Jarrett Stidham is a good quarterback, and Cameron Petway is a good running back, and they really had some weapons there for Auburn, and those weapons were kept in the shed.
Our title's a little bit deceiving. Because, and the way I say deceiving is, of course, everyone's going to be focused on the matchup that you said. Lamar Action Jackson against the mighty defense of the Clemson Tigers. Like, just from this past week, they had the ACC Players of the Week. There are 4 of them from here. Quarterback, Lamar Action Jackson. 525 total yards this past week, 6 touchdowns. Wide receiver, Jalen Smith. Louisville, 9 receptions, 183 yards, and a touchdown. Defensively, defensive line, Austin Bryant from Clemson, tied a school record with 4 sacks in the 11-sack game against Jarrett Stidham. Then linebacker, they had Dorian O'Daniel, who had 14 total tackles and 1.5 sacks on his own. That's going to be the matchup that we look for. The Louisville offense, led by Lamar Jackson, against the Clemson defense. And I think that matchup is going to play out similar to what it did last year. Lamar Action Jackson gets in the end zone, maybe 1 more touchdown on the ground compared to his feet, or on the ground compared to the air because he can move around. Maybe he throws a pick in this one because we know how Lamar Jackson gets against good defenses. He usually throws at least 1 INT. But the big thing to me, and this is what the game is going to come down to, is the Clemson offense against the Louisville defense, because both of those units for the respective teams, that's where I have my question mark. Because if I look to last year's game, there were 2 positions on offense that to me helped solidify the win. Yes, Louisville had a chance to either win or tie the game late in last year's game. That 4th down that didn't happen, they thought they had it, they didn't. They lost the game. But when you've got Deshaun Watson who goes out there, and yeah, I know he threw 3 picks, but when he goes out there and throws 5 touchdowns, and you have a guy like Wayne Gallman who gets 1 on the ground and 110 yards on his own, that's going to help you guys win the game no matter who you are playing, even though Watson threw 3 interceptions. So far this year, I'm not convinced Kelly Bryant is going, because he's not Deshaun Watson, and I'm not convinced that he has that type of performance in him. Even in the Kent State game, they won 56-3, and he only had 1 touchdown, 1 INT. Deshaun Watson would have at least blew him out by halftime before he got taken out of that game. Whereas against Auburn, 14-6. And I know what you're saying. Auburn is still Auburn, no matter how badly that offensive line played against that front 7 of the Clemson Tigers. But that is my real big question mark, is Kelly Bryant in the offense for the Tigers, because so far against good opponents, Kent State is Kent State. That's why I'm not looking at that one, you should score 56 against Kent State if you are Kelly Bryant and the Tigers, but only 14 against Auburn. However, I'm not going to be a Louisville apologist here. So far in their games this year, they've played Purdue, which to me you should have blew them out, and a team like North Carolina who lost their top quarterback in Mitchell Trubisky this past season. You give up 28 and 35 points respectively. So that to me is the matchup that we got to look at in this game. Whichever one wins that matchup will help their team and push the needle more onto their side.
Yeah, I think another thing for Clemson, when you talk about this Clemson offense, it's Kelly Bryant, Hunter Renfrow, and then who? And then who? Because at the running back position, you can clearly see just when you're looking at the box score,
Kelly Bryant.
The next best guy running the football who got the second most carries was Adam Choice. He carried the ball 7 times for 17 yards. Next best, Tavian Feaster, 3 carries for 15 yards. And then it just goes down from there. So you didn't have anybody running the football outside of Kelly Bryant. And now a lot of people will say, well, I shouldn't say a lot of people will say, but a lot of people also come in and say, well, Jalen Hurts runs the football a whole lot for Alabama. But then so does Damian Harris. So does Bo Scarborough. So do the guys like that. But who else is going to help in that position? And then from Clemson in the receiving game, how much more can Hunter Renfrow do for you? Because he's a big possession receiver. You know, is he going to be able to try and get down the field, get into the end zone, and make some plays like he did against Alabama's defense in the championship game last year?
He's also a guy on 3rd and short. They can slip out into that screen and just hit him for a first.
He is totally your guy. I think he's probably the best receiver on this team and the most trusted receiver on this team right now for Kelly Bryant. So what is he going to be able to do to make to be able to make some big plays come Saturday when they're playing a very good team in Louisville?
Yeah, and I mean, the thing with just some of the things I was noticing with the stats when you were saying them, Feaster, who you said, I believe, was the 3rd highest rusher in that last game?
Yeah.
Overall this season, 9 carries, 84 yards. He's number 2 on the team right behind Kelly Bryant. He is number 2 with 9 carries. Right behind him is Trevor Anteni, who has 8 carries, 81 yards. So it's really Kelly Bryant's your main guy running the ball with the most carries, the most yards. He doesn't get the highest average, but he's a quarterback. I don't expect him to, unless you're Lamar Jackson or Michael Vick and you're going to do it all yourself. But he also leads the team in rushing touchdowns with 3. I wonder with this offense, is this going to be a game where the question pops up of Kelly Bryant cannot be expected to do it all? Someone from especially the rushing game. Because, I mean, the wide receiver core, they have Renfrow, but they also have Ray McLeod, who has 105 yards on the season, but he doesn't have a touchdown, which really needs to change if Clemson wants to score more points. I think this rushing attack is going to need to be there to not just get yards and say, hey, we need a running back, but if you can get a run game going, keep this Louisville defense on the field, tire them out, keep Lamar off the field. Because if Lamar Action Jackson is on the sideline, he can't hurt you.
Exactly.
Can't hurt you if he's standing next to the coach.
No, you're definitely right. My biggest thing is I know that we're only going to be in week 3, but how far are we going to get before we're talking about, okay, well, you know, who's going to step up here in the Clemson running game? You know, I'm not trying to sound the alarm right now, but they don't have anybody else so far who has stepped up in that position. They're going to need to find somebody to step up in that position because of the pure fact of what you said, where Kelly Bryant can't do it all. He can't do it all. And, you know, you can say, well, Lamar Jackson does it all. Well, if you look, they also had another guy on that team who carried the ball for 149 yards. So it wasn't just Lamar Jackson. Yes, he had a great day through the air and on the ground.
But they have a running back they
also had another guy who went out there and did better than what Jackson did. So there has got to be something for Clemson that shows up outside of Kelly Bryant in the run game. Otherwise, that alone could be a reason why Clemson could lose that game, is because if Kelly Bryant, let's say, cannot get anything going through the air, then you have to turn to the running game. And if you don't have anything going through the running game, and I know we're kind of taking one game, so we're kind of doing a cherry pick on this one of the one game that Clemson plays against Auburn. After week 1, they have, like 5 guys score a touchdown on the ground. But this is all we have to work with so far for this year.
Whereas for Louisville, you can take their first one because Purdue, you expected them to be a Kent State, but they proved to be a little bit more than Kent State. I almost said Penn State, which would have been totally different than Kent State.
Exactly, but you don't want to have that be the reason why you lose against Louisville because you didn't have a solid run game. But right now for Clemson, we haven't seen anybody. Now after a good game is in the books, there's no one there. There was no one there that stepped up. And again, Kelly Bryant, 19 carries. Next best, Adam Choice, 7. That says something.
And the thing I'm looking at right now, and you can take this however you want, and whenever people throw out stats, usually you throw out stats to win your argument. I'm just throwing this out, and you guys make your own conclusion on this. When we look at the rushing defensive stats this year for Louisville, they are second in the nation, right behind LSU by about 2.5 yards per game. They've only given up 34 yards per game against opposing run games. However, the devil's advocate here, and this is the thing that I throw in there, is they have also only faced the 13th most carries. They've only had 44 attempts against them. Average yard of attempt, 1.5. So you can look at that and go, that 1.5, by the way, is tied for second, 0.1 behind Michigan, who has a 0.1 or a 1.4. You can take that however you want. You can look at that and say Louisville's rushing defense is really good. That front seven is good. That's why teams can't run on them. Or you can go ahead and look at it like I am, and I look at it and go, well, North Carolina had 6 carries for Brown, and Carter only had 8 carries. That, to me, is not a big enough workload to get a guy going. And then you look at Purdue, and they had their top guy only had 8 carries. 8, 4, and 5 their top guys had in the carry department. So I look at it and I go, maybe that is a reason why, but if Clemson doesn't have that guy they can give it to consistently, that could be a problem for them in this game, especially if that leads to 3 and outs. Renfro, let's say Louisville packages a double team on third downs with him, so you can't just slip them out, and you get a lot of 3 and outs, and give Lamar Action Jackson the ball. The more times he touches it, the higher chance he's going to make you pay and could have a 6 touchdown game.
Yeah, see, that's the thing is that is there a plan behind Kelly Bryant for me at the running back position? Again, because Louisville can play a little defense of their own, but I think that obviously the one that we are looking for is that defense of Clemson. That's the one that we expect is going to come up. That's going to come up and that's going to make some big plays. I am interested to see how they will run the football, but at the same time, I'm very, very interested for that defensive matchup against Lamar Jackson and how they'll be able to really get him out of his rhythm, keep him off his game, because that's what I'm looking for. That's what I think is going to be the winner for Clemson. If they're able to get the win, it's going to be because of their defense. It won't be because of anything else. It will be because they played a very good defensive game and they held down Jackson. And
I'm not expecting in this one a kind of stifling performance from either side, especially from the Clemson side, because I look at last year, besides the pick and maybe on that last drive making him come out of the pocket to throw to a receiver where that running back had to try to run for that first down, to me, last year, Clemson didn't do a lot where it's like, wow, you really stifled Lamar Jackson. He still got 3 touchdowns in the game. The big reason why you were able, in my mind, to overcome that is your quarterback threw 5 touchdowns. Yeah, I know he threw 3 picks, but Deshaun Watson threw 5 touchdowns in that game and proved why he was a national championship caliber quarterback. Here's the question I want to ask you, and this is what I'm kind of leaning towards here at the end of this segment. We get this game early this year, very early. And this kind of goes on top of what we talked about last week with Florida State. Didn't get to see them play this week because of Hurricane Irma. We will not get to see them play again this week as the Miami-Florida State game is postponed. That's why I'm going to ask you this question. Louisville gets Florida State October 21st. Clemson gets them a little bit later, November 11th, Dave Oster's birthday weekend. Remember that one. Is this going to be, will we look back at this game and say, this was the this division of the ACC, this was their division championship right here, third week of the season?
Clemson's?
Both of them, Clemson or Louisville. Because of what we talked about last week with Florida State, now that Francois is out, maybe I know we got to see what Blackman does, but they're now really the third favorite behind Louisville and Clemson.
It's a huge game. I mean, that's without a doubt. But I don't know, because it's so early and there's still so much season to be played. There's still so many things that could and will happen.
You think Boston College is going to get one?
You got me. You got me. It's hard to say that this is the be all end all game.
Yeah.
It really is, because of what I had just mentioned. You know, there's going to be other big games. There's going to be other games that we're going, okay, this is going to be one of those kind of cupcake walk in the parks. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, they're like Louisville last year. They're struggling against, who was it, Virginia? It's like, who would have thunk? We thought they're going to come in, blow out Virginia, everything's going to be good.
They needed a late touchdown in that one. They
needed to wake up late in that one, and they did, thankfully for them. But it's just, it's again, one of those where you can't count something too early, because you can have a big game really early and think, okay, this is it. That was the big game that they needed, blah, blah, blah. But then you can also have a game that you don't think is going to mean a whole lot, and neither does that team, which is why they overlook them, come out slow. The other team gets up, and all of a sudden, boom. And if you lose that game, that big game early in the season, it meant nothing.
No, and this is a huge game, and I think looking into my future, like my crystal ball.
Yes.
When we get to the end of the year, we could look back at this game and say, in retrospect, this was the division championship. But the most important thing this game holds in importance is whichever team wins this game, I believe, is going to get a huge ton of momentum confidence-wise. Because if Louisville wins this game, they're going to be like, we could win the ACC. The power is ours.
Yeah.
Like Captain Planet would always say, the power is yours. That's what Louisville will be thinking. If Clemson gets a big win here, this could kind of catapult this offense into, yes, we are the Clemson Tigers. We're going back to the college football playoff. Whichever team wins is going to get that confidence, because I look at last year and Clemson wins the game October 1st. Louisville still, Duke, they play well. NC State, they play well. That Virginia game, like you said, they needed to wake up in that one. Blow out Boston College and Wake Forest before they lose to Houston. By that time, they were done. After they lost to Clemson, they still looked at it and said, hey, Clemson could still lose to the Seminoles. We are still in this. But then once they lost to Houston, I kind of got this vibe of like, well, fuck it, the season's over. And then they lost to Kentucky to end the year. Then they get blown out by LSU in their bowl game. It wasn't a good way to end the season. That Houston game is what I think could happen in this one for the winner. They could gain confidence and move forward, and whoever wins this could have the confidence to kind of roll through their schedule, where the loser might be sitting there asking a few more questions that they didn't have. But we are almost going to run out of time on the camera, so this is where I'm going to turn it on to you guys. Let us know down below, what are you thinking about this game? How does Kelly Bryant play? How do you think Lamar Jackson, the Heisman candidate yet again after last week's performance? I mean, 6 touchdowns. You got to throw it out there.
Ricky already crowned him. After last week's performance, Ricky crowned him, and I'm still holding true to my bold prediction because I got to hold on to that one.
I did. Back-to-back Heismans, it would be great. But let us know what you guys think about this game down below in the comment section.